Jack Miller sat alone in his small backyard shed, the glow of computer screens lighting his tired face. It was past midnight in Oak Ridge, a town so small it barely showed up on maps. Jack wasn't supposed to be awake. He had classes to teach tomorrow at the community college, but the strange signals coming through his homemade radio telescope had kept him up for 3 nights straight. "This can't be right," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. The pattern was too perfect, too precise. Natural space phenomena didn't create such organized mathematical sequences. Jack had built his radio telescope after leaving NASA 5 years ago. What started as a hobby to stay connected to the stars had just picked up something impossible. A message from space that wasn't random noise. The signal repeated every 12 minutes. First came a series of prime numbers, then what appeared to be a coded message. Jack's hands shook as he ran the sequence through his decoding program again. "If this is real ... He whispered to himself. By morning, Jack had filled 3 notebooks with calculations. The message was becoming clearer. It contained star coordinates, mathematical constants universal to any advanced civilization, and something that could only be described as a distress call. Jack called in sick to work. He needed 1 more day to be absolutely sure before he told anyone. By sunset, there was no doubt left in his mind. He had received a message from an alien civilization. The message spoke of the Altarian Alliance, a peaceful group of 12 star systems. Their queen, Zoralina, had been kidnapped by enemies called the Drazari while traveling near Earth's solar system. The Altarians were reaching out to humans for help. Jack laughed at the absurdity. Why would advanced aliens need our help? He asked his empty shed. The answer came in the next decoded section. Humans possessed unique problem-solving abilities and unpredictable thinking that the logical, methodical Drazari couldn't anticipate. After a sleepless night debating what to do, Jack called an old colleague from NASA. 6 hours later, government vehicles pulled up outside his modest home. "Mr. Miller?" A woman in an Air Force uniform stood at his door. "I'm Colonel Susan Wright. We need to talk about the signal you've been receiving." Jack wasn't surprised they knew. "I was going to come forward. I believe you," Susan said. "Please, pack a bag. We have a plane waiting." On the flight to Washington, D.C., Susan explained that government satellites had detected unusual activity near Jupiter's moon Europa. Astronomers around the world were reporting gravitational anomalies that suggested the presence of technology far beyond human capabilities. "So you already knew about aliens?" Jack asked. "We suspected," Susan replied. "But you're the first to translate an actual message." The Pentagon was a maze of corridors and security checkpoints. Jack was led to a conference room where a tall, serious man waited. "Eric Dawson, National Security Advisor," the man said, shaking Jack's hand. "Show us what you found." Jack connected his laptop and displayed his findings. "The message is clear. An alien queen has been kidnapped, and her people are asking Earth for help." Eric's face remained neutral. "And why should we believe this isn't a trap?" "Because they could have invaded already if they wanted to," Jack replied. "They've been observing us. They know our strengths and weaknesses. They're asking for help because they need our way of thinking." "What way is that?" Susan asked. "Creativity, unpredictability. The message says the Drazari are logical and methodical to a fault. They can't understand or predict human behavior because we don't always follow logical patterns. We're emotional, intuitive, sometimes irrational." The room fell silent as technicians brought in reports confirming parts of Jack's translation. Government scientists had independently verified unusual energy signatures consistent with advanced technology moving through the outer solar system. "There's more," Jack said quietly. "Without Queen Zoralina, the Altarian Alliance will fall apart. The 12 systems will become vulnerable, and the Drazari will conquer them one by one." He paused, letting his next words sink in. "And then they'll come for Earth." Susan and Eric exchanged looks. "How can you be sure?" Eric asked. "The Drazari are expanding their empire. Earth is resource-rich and strategically located." "We'd be next," Jack explained. "The Altarians have been protecting us indirectly. With them gone, we'd be exposed." A phone rang. Eric answered, listened briefly, then hung up. The president wants a briefing in 30 minutes. As they gathered their materials, Susan pulled Jack aside. You understand what this means? This is first contact. Everything changes today. Jack nodded, the weight of it all finally hitting him. I never thought decoding an alien message would lead to this. History rarely announces itself, Susan replied. It just shows up on your doorstep one day. In the Oval Office, President Olivia Martinez listened intently as Jack explained the situation. Unlike the others, she asked no questions until he finished. Let me understand correctly, she said finally. Aliens have asked us, specifically humans, to help rescue their kidnapped queen from other aliens? Yes, Madam President. And if we don't, these Drizari might eventually come for Earth? It's highly likely, Jack confirmed. President Martinez stood and walked to the window, looking out at the White House lawn where tourists took photos, unaware that the world had just fundamentally changed. Colonel Wright, what are our options? She asked. We can ignore it and hope for the best, Susan began, or we can try to help and potentially gain powerful allies. The Altarians have technology far beyond ours, Jack added. Their friendship could advance humanity by centuries. The president turned back to face them. And the risks? Incalculable, Eric said bluntly. We would be involving ourselves in an interstellar conflict with technology. We don't understand against enemies we've never seen, President Martinez nodded slowly. Yet doing nothing could be just as dangerous. She straightened her jacket. Decision made. Colonel Wright, you will lead this operation. Mr. Miller, we need your expertise on these aliens. Mr. Dawson, assemble whatever resources they need. Madam President, Susan said, this mission will require special personnel. People with unique skills who can adapt to unknown situations. You have my authorization to recruit whoever you need, the president replied. This stays completely classified. As far as the public knows, nothing has changed. She looked each of them in the eye. Humanity's first step into the galactic community will be to help others in need. I can think of no better introduction. As they left the Oval Office, Jack felt a strange mix of terror and excitement. Just days ago, he had been teaching basic astronomy to college students. Now he was helping plan a mission to rescue an alien. Queen, what happens next? He asked Susan as they walked through the White House corridors. Now, she said with a grim smile, we find Earth's mightiest heroes. The underground facility in Wyoming was built during the Cold War and hadn't seen much use since then. Now it hummed with activity as workers prepared it for a mission unlike any before. Deep below the surface, away from curious eyes, President Martinez addressed a carefully selected group. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice echoing in the concrete chamber. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. She explained the situation an alien queen needed there. Help and possibly the survival of Earth depended on their success. The room stayed silent as the reality sank in. These weren't people who scared easily, but learning that aliens existed and needed human help was a lot to take in. Colonel Susan Wright stepped forward. You're here because you have skills we need. This mission will take us into unknown territory. With minimal support, we need people who can think on their feet and adapt to situations we can't even imagine. Jack Miller stood nervously to the side. He wasn't a soldier or a spy. Just yesterday, he'd been a community college teacher. Now, he watched as Susan introduced the core team members. Dr. Nathan Chun, Susan said, pointing to a thin man with glasses who looked barely 30. Top physicist from MIT, specialist in theoretical propulsion systems, Nathan nodded slightly. His research on exotic energy had earned him both praise and ridicule from his peers. Now it seemed the universe had proven him right. William Harris, Susan continued, former Navy SEAL, now runs wilderness survival courses in Alaska. Bill was tall and weathered, with a beard and calm eyes that missed nothing. He'd fought in 3 conflicts and had more experience with unexpected situations than anyone else in the room. Dr. Amara Johnson, linguistic expert and anthropologist. Amara was striking, with dark skin and bright eyes that sparkled with intelligence. She'd developed revolutionary translation algorithms that had changed how computers processed language. And, Kyle Rodriguez, mechanical engineering genius. Kyle was shorter than the others, with quick hands and a quicker smile. His work in disaster zones was legendary. He could build almost anything from whatever materials were available. Together with Jack Miller, our alien communications expert, you form the core team, Susan finished. Others will support from here, but you six will be going on the actual mission. Going where exactly? Bill asked. His voice was deep and practical. Beyond Neptune, Susan replied. To the edge of our solar system. The next 2 weeks were intense. The team trained 16 hours a day, studying the limited information available about Altarian biology and culture. Jack shared everything he had decoded from the messages, while military specialists taught them combat techniques. The Drizari are physically stronger than humans, Jack explained during one session, but they think in straight lines. Their tactics are perfect but predictable. Perfect can be beaten, Bill said. Predictable can be exploited. They trained in simulated low-gravity environments. They learned to use experimental weapons based on theoretical physics. They practiced making decisions with incomplete information. But tensions grew. Bill thought Jack spent too much time on theory and not enough on practicality. Nathan kept to himself, working on calculations no one else understood. Kyle tinkered endlessly with their equipment, improving designs that were already cutting edge. During a training exercise where they had to work together to solve a complex problem, the arguments finally erupted. That's not going to work, Bill told Jack sharply. We need solutions that work in the real world, not just in your head. And we need to understand what we're dealing with before we charge in. Jack fired back. Amara stepped between them. We all have different approaches. That's why we were chosen. Susan watched the conflict with concern. They had the skills, but they weren't yet a team. And time was running out. That evening, as they sat exhausted in the common area, a technician rushed in. We've received another transmission, he said. The message was brief but urgent. The Drazari had moved Queen Zoralina to a mining outpost on a dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt. They had days, not weeks, to reach her. President Martinez made a video call to the facility. Her face was serious on the large screen. I've consulted with my advisors and military leaders, she said. We're proceeding with the mission. You leave in 48 hours. The announcement changed everything. Suddenly, their disagreements seemed small compared to the task ahead. That night, Susan found the team still awake at midnight, working together. Bill and Jack were discussing tactical approaches. Kyle and Nathan had their heads together over propulsion designs. Amara was practicing the Altarian greeting phrases. Jack had taught her. The final day before launch, they were shown their ship. The Artemis sat in a massive underground hangar, unlike any spacecraft they had seen before. She's experimental, the chief engineer explained. Built using our most advanced technology and insights from the Altarian communications. She's never been tested for deep space travel, but she's the best chance we have. The ship was sleek and compact, designed for speed rather than comfort. The living quarters were tight, with just enough room for 6 people on a short mission. The engine room housed technology so advanced that even Nathan looked impressed. She'd get us there in days instead of years, Nathan said, studying the propulsion system. The theories were right. That night, none of them slept much. Jack found Susan on the observation deck, looking at the stars through a viewport. Are we ready for this? He asked. Susan considered the question. No, she said honestly. No one could be ready for this. We're about to become the first humans to attempt an interplanetary rescue mission, the first to knowingly meet alien species, the first to travel beyond Neptune. That's not exactly comforting, Jack said with a nervous laugh. It's not meant to be, Susan replied. But I believe in this team. Different as we are, we each bring something vital. The next morning, they suited up in specially designed gear. Their suits could protect them in the vacuum of space and the freezing temperatures of the outer solar system. Each carried personalized equipment, Bill's tactical gear, Nathan's scientific instruments, Amara's advanced translation devices, Kyle's multi-tools, and Jack's communication systems. President Martinez spoke to them one last time before launch. Humanity takes its first step into the galactic community today, she said. You carry not just the hopes of your country, but of your entire planet. Good luck and Godspeed. As they boarded the Artemis, Jack looked at the faces of his teammates. 2 weeks ago, they had been strangers. Now they were about to face the unknown together. Ready for the greatest adventure in human history? Susan asked as they strapped into their seats. The countdown began. The massive hangar doors above them opened to reveal the night sky. Artemis, you are cleared for launch, came the voice from Mission Control. The engines ignited, and Earth's mightiest heroes began their journey to the stars. The Artemis shot upward through the atmosphere, pressing the crew deep into their seats. The ship vibrated around them as it fought against Earth's gravity. Then suddenly, the shaking stopped. They had reached space. Status report, Susan ordered. Her voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through her body. All systems functioning, Kyle responded, checking the screens in front of him. Engine performance exceeding expectations. The team unbuckled and floated in the zero gravity of the cabin. Through the viewport, they could see Earth growing smaller behind them. Everything we know, everyone we love, all on that little speck, Jack whispered. Nathan moved to the navigation console. Setting course for the outer solar system? We should reach Mars orbit in 12 hours. The Artemis was faster than any spacecraft humans had built before. Using technology based on the Altarian messages, it could travel in days what would normally take years. Still, the vastness of space meant long hours with nothing but stars outside the windows. The crew settled into a routine. Susan and Bill took turns at the command station. Nathan monitored the engines and navigation systems. Kyle checked and rechecked every part of the ship. Amara studied the Altarian and Drazari language samples Jack had decoded. Jack himself continued to analyze new signals they picked up as they moved farther from Earth. On the second day, as they passed the orbit of Mars, disaster struck. A solar flare bigger than any recorded in recent history washed over the ship. Warning alarms blared throughout the cabin. Communications array damaged, Kyle reported, his fingers flying over the controls. We're losing contact with Earth. Susan made a quick decision. We need to repair it. Kyle, Nathan, suit up for a spacewalk. The two men prepared for the dangerous task. The special suits they wore would protect them from the vacuum of space and radiation, but the repair would be delicate and risky. Be careful out there, Jack told them as they entered the airlock. Outside the ship, Kyle and Nathan moved carefully along the hull. The damaged communications array hung from the side of the ship, connected by just a few cables. Hold my tether, Kyle said, passing the safety line to Nathan. I need both hands for this. Nathan watched anxiously as Kyle worked on the delicate equipment. One wrong move could send Kyle drifting into space or damage the array beyond repair. The sun glared harshly in the distance, a constant reminder of the dangerous radiation surrounding them. After tense minutes of work, Kyle signaled success. Got it, the array should work now. Back inside the ship, the team breathed a collective sigh of relief as the communications system came back online. But their celebration was short-lived. I'm picking up energy signatures, Jack said, studying the scanner. They don't match anything in our database. Drazari scout ships? Amara suggested, looking over his shoulder. The patterns match what we've learned about their technology. They're tracking us, Bill concluded grimly. Susan called the team together. We need to decide how to proceed. Do we confront them or try to avoid detection? Confrontation is too risky, Bill argued. We don't know their capabilities. But if we let them follow us, they might alert the main fleet, Jack countered. The debate grew heated until Susan raised her hand for silence. We stay hidden, she decided. Our mission is to rescue the Queen, not start a war. Bill nodded in agreement, but Jack looked doubtful. It was the first real test of Susan's leadership, and the tension remained even after the decision was made. As they continued outward, passing the asteroid belt, Amara made a discovery. She had been listening to intercepted Drizari communications, using her translation algorithms to decipher their language. "They're planning something big," she told the others. "The Queen is just part of it. They want to expand throughout nearby star systems, including ours?" Susan asked. Amara nodded. "Earth is specifically mentioned." The news made their mission even more urgent. They weren't just saving an alien queen. They were potentially saving their own planet. 6 days into the journey, they approached Jupiter, the largest planet in the solar system. Its massive form dominated the viewports, bands of swirling clouds visible on its surface. Nathan had been unusually quiet for hours, running calculations and simulations. Finally, he spoke up. "I think I've found a way to get us to the Kuiper Belt faster." The others gathered around as he explained. "If we use Jupiter's gravitational field correctly, we can slingshot ourselves toward our destination. It could cut our travel time in half." "What's the catch?" Susan asked, sensing there was more. "It's dangerous," Nathan admitted. "If my calculations are off by even a tiny amount, we could crash into Jupiter or be flung off course into deep space." Silence fell over the crew as they considered the options. Their original route was safer but slower, maybe too slow to save. The Queen. Nathan's plan was risky but might give them the time they needed. Susan looked at each team member. "This affects all of us. We vote, I say we do it." Kyle spoke first. "The ship can handle it. The risk is acceptable given what's at stake," Bill agreed. "The Queen's time is running out," Amara added. "I vote yes." Jack hesitated but nodded. "We came to do the impossible. Let's do it." With the decision made, they prepared for the maneuver. Nathan fed the calculations into the navigation computer while Kyle adjusted the engine output. Susan and Bill secured everything and everyone for what would be a rough ride. "Gravitational slingshot in 3 minutes," Nathan announced. "Everyone, strap in." The Artemis approached Jupiter at incredible speed. The gas giant grew larger and larger in their viewports until it filled their entire view. The ship began to shake as it felt the pull of Jupiter's enormous gravity. "Engines at maximum." Kyle shouted over the noise. The crew felt the crushing force as the ship accelerated around the curve of the planet's gravitational field. The pressure pushed them hard into their seats, making it difficult to breathe or move. For one terrifying moment, it seemed like the ship would be pulled into Jupiter's atmosphere. Warning lights flashed across every console as the Artemis strained against the massive forces. Then suddenly, they were shooting away from the planet, moving faster than any human vessel had ever traveled before. "We did it," Nathan gasped as the pressure eased. New estimated arrival at the Kuiper Belt, 18 hours. As they recovered from the intense maneuver, the ship's sensors began to pick up new readings. "I'm detecting an artificial structure," Jack reported. "It's the mining outpost." On the main screen, they could see their destination, a dark, irregular shape against the blackness of space. Somewhere in that remote outpost, Queen Zoralina was being held prisoner. Susan gathered the team for a final briefing. "We're about to make history," she told them as they gathered around the tactical display. "The first humans to set foot on a Kuiper Belt object, the first to engage an alien species in combat, and hopefully the first to forge an alliance that will protect Earth." The outpost grew clearer on their screens as they approached. It was a sprawling industrial complex built into the surface of a dwarf planet. Scans showed multiple buildings, defense systems, and life forms moving about. "We go in quiet," Susan decided. "Find the Queen, get her out." As the team prepared their gear for the rescue operation, each person felt the weight of responsibility. Not just for the mission, but for humanity's first steps into a larger universe. "Ready?" Susan asked, checking her weapon one last time. 5 determined faces looked back at her. "Ready," they answered as one. The Artemis touched down quietly 2 kilometers from the mining outpost. The team had chosen a narrow canyon that would hide their ship from Drazari sensors. Outside, the environment was hostile, nearly a vacuum with temperatures far below. Freezing, environmental suits on and checked. Susan ordered as they prepared to exit. Remember, this isn't Earth. Gravity is lower, atmosphere is basically non-existent. One by one, they sealed their specialized suits. These weren't ordinary spacesuits, but advanced designs created specifically for this mission. Each suit regulated body temperature in the extreme cold and included tactical systems for the mission ahead. "Comes check," Susan said after they were all suited up. "Bill here, reading you clear. Nathan, all systems go. Kyle, ready to roll. Amara, connection good. Jack, linked in." Susan nodded, satisfied. "Let's move out. Bill takes point." Jack and Amara established the command post halfway. "Nathan, Kyle and I will approach the main structure." They exited the ship into the alien landscape. The dwarf planet's surface was icy and dark, with jagged rocks jutting up from the frozen ground. Above them, the black sky was filled with more stars than they had ever seen from Earth. With no atmosphere to dim their light, Bill led them forward, moving with the practiced silence of a Special Forces soldier. They traversed the rough terrain, slowly using natural features for cover. After an hour of careful movement, they reached a ridge overlooking the outpost. "I count 52 life forms," Bill reported, using the scanner in his suit, "most concentrated in the central buildings." The outpost was larger than they had expected, a sprawling industrial complex carved into the icy surface. Metal structures rose from the ground, connected by enclosed walkways. Lights glowed from windows, creating eerie patterns on the frozen landscape. "I'm deploying the reconnaissance drones," Bill said, releasing 3 small devices from his pack. The drones, no larger than a human hand, flew silently toward the outpost. Jack and Amara set up their equipment in a sheltered location. "Command." "Post established," Jack reported. "We have full sensor coverage of the area." The drones sent back their first images of the Drazari. The aliens were tall, insect-like beings with 4 arms and hard, chitinous exteriors that served as natural armor. They moved with precision and purpose, clearly well-trained and disciplined. "They're using thermal imaging to monitor their surroundings," Bill noted, watching the patterns of the guards. "Their vision is adapted to darkness." Kyle had been studying the outpost systems through the drone feeds. "I think I can hack into their power grid," he said. "Create a distraction that would draw the guards away from the central building." "Do it," Susan decided. Kyle connected his equipment to a small transmitter. His fingers moved quickly over the controls as he worked to bypass the alien security systems. After several tense minutes, he looked up with a smile. "I'm initiating power fluctuations in the outer sections. Now." Lights in the distant parts of the outpost began to flicker and die. As they watched, Drazari guards moved toward the affected areas, just as they had hoped. "Time to move," Susan said. "Bill, Nathan with me. Jack and Amara, guide us through." The 3 advanced toward the central building while the outpost was distracted. They moved from shadow to shadow, using the lower gravity to make quick, silent jumps between cover points. "2 guards at the entrance," Jack's voice came through their coms. "They haven't been called away." Bill gestured to a service entrance he had spotted. "Alternative route?" They changed direction, approaching the smaller door. Kyle remotely interfaced with the locking mechanism, and after a few seconds, the door slid open. Inside, the alien technology surrounded them. Strange lights pulsed along the walls. The air was thin but breathable, allowing them to open their helmet visors for better visibility. "Which way?" Susan asked. Nathan studied the layout on his wrist computer. "According to the scans, the central chamber should be ... way." He pointed down a corridor to their right. They moved deeper into the facility, encountering no resistance at first. The diversion was working better than expected, but as they approached a junction in the corridors, they heard the clicking sounds of Drazari communication. "Hide," Susan whispered. They pressed themselves into an alcove as a patrol of 3 Drazari warriors passed by. Up close, the aliens were even more intimidating. Nearly 7 feet tall with multiple compound eyes and powerful limbs. Each carried what appeared to be an energy weapon. After the patrol passed, they continued toward the central chamber. Nathan studied the alien control panels they passed, his scientific curiosity evident despite the danger. I think I can access their internal systems from here, he said, stopping at a particularly complex panel. Make it quick, Susan told him. Nathan's fingers moved over the alien interface. He had studied the Altarian information about Drazari technology and now put that knowledge to use. I've gained partial access, he reported. I can see their internal security feeds. The images showed more Drazari in various parts of the facility, but one chamber in particular caught their attention. A glowing containment field held a slender figure that was clearly not Drazari. That's her, Susan said. Queen Zoralina. But as Nathan worked to determine the exact location of that chamber, his hand slipped on an unfamiliar control. An alarm began to sound throughout the facility. We're compromised, Bill said, drawing his weapon. We need to move fast. They ran down the corridor toward where they believed the Queen was being held. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of Drazari soldiers responding to the alarm. Take the next left, Jack guided them through their combs. The central chamber should be 30 meters ahead. They turned the corner and found themselves face to face with 4 Drazari warriors. The aliens reacted with surprising speed, raising their weapons. Bill fired first, his advanced weapon emitting a pulse that knocked one Drazari backward. The others returned fire, forcing the humans to take cover. We can't be pinned down here, Susan shouted over the noise. Nathan, keep going. To the Queen, we'll hold them off. Nathan nodded and slipped away while Susan and Bill engaged the Drazari. The alien weapons fired bursts of energy that scorched the walls where they hit. Their armor is tough, Bill called out after several of his shots seemed to have minimal effect. Aim for the joints. Susan adjusted her aim and fired at a Drazari's limb connection. The alien staggered, its limb temporarily disabled. This new tactic worked better, and they managed to fight their way forward. Meanwhile, Nathan had reached the central chamber door. It was sealed with a complex lock, but Kyle talked him through bypassing it remotely. When the door finally opened, Nathan found himself in a large room dominated by the containment field they had seen on the security feed. Inside the field floated Queen Zoralina. She was unlike anything Nathan had imagined. Her skin was luminescent, almost translucent, with delicate features that seemed both alien and somehow familiar. She appeared weakened, her light dimming periodically. I've found her, Nathan reported through the comms. She's alive but doesn't look well. Before he could approach the containment field, the main door to the chamber slid open. A larger Drazari entered, flanked by 4 guards. The markings on its armor identified it as a commander. Nathan ducked behind equipment, but he had been seen. The Drazari commander spoke in its clicking language and the guards spread out to search the room. I'm surrounded, Nathan whispered. Into his central chamber. 5 Drazari, including what looks like their leader. Susan's voice came back immediately. Hold on, we're coming. Nathan knew they might not make it in time. He looked around desperately for something to use, some way to free the Queen before he was captured. Then, suddenly, the lights in the chamber flickered. The containment field wavered. What's happening? Nathan asked. Jack's voice came through. Amara and I have overridden their environmental controls. Oxygen levels in that section are dropping. Their biology is more sensitive to it than ours or the Altarians. The Drazari began to move more slowly, clearly affected by the changing atmosphere. Nathan seized his chance. He darted from cover toward the containment field controls. Just as he reached them, Susan and Bill burst into the chamber, engaging the disoriented Drazari guards. In the confusion, Nathan deactivated the field. Queen Zoralina began to fall as the energy supporting her disappeared, but Nathan caught her. I've got her, he called out. We need to move. Susan fought her way to them while Bill held the entrance. Let's go, she ordered. Helping Nathan support the weakened Queen, they retreated from the chamber, the Queen between them. She was lighter than expected in the low gravity, but still barely conscious. The dot. Drazari, the Queen spoke suddenly, her voice melodic even in its weakness. They plan to use my genetic material ... for weapons. Save your strength, Susan told her. We're getting you out of here. They met up with Bill at the corridor junction. Reinforcements coming, he reported grimly. We need another route. Jack, Amara, we need an exit path, Susan called through the comms. Northeast corridor, Jack replied. Fewer guards that way. We'll meet you halfway. They changed direction, moving as quickly as they could with the injured queen. Behind them, they could hear the Drazari recovering and organizing a pursuit. Almost there, Susan encouraged as they approached the rendezvous point. The journey back to the Artemis was treacherous. Drazari patrols swarmed the area, searching for the escaped queen and her human rescuers. The team moved quietly through the frozen landscape, using the rocky terrain for cover. Queen Zoralina was conscious but weak, her luminescent skin dimmer than it should be. They're closing in behind us, Bill warned, checking the scanner on his wrist. Susan made a quick decision. Split up. Bill, take Nathan and the queen directly to the ship. The rest of us will create a diversion. Bill nodded and guided Nathan, who was supporting Queen Zoralina. They headed toward the canyon where the Artemis waited while Susan, Jack, Kyle, and Amara moved in a different direction, making deliberate noise to draw attention. The diversion worked. Most of the Drazari patrols followed Susan's group, giving Bill and Nathan a clearer path. Susan led her team in a wide circle, staying just ahead of their pursuers while gradually working their way back toward the ship. Bill, status? Susan asked through her comm. We've reached the Artemis, came the reply. Starting pre-launch procedures. The Queen is safely aboard. Good, we're coming in hot. Be ready for immediate takeoff. Susan's group sprinted the final distance to the ship, energy blasts from Drazari weapons striking the ground around them. They reached the Artemis just as the engines began to warm up. Everyone in, Susan ordered, providing covering fire as her team boarded. She was the last to enter, the hatch sealing behind her as a Drazari blast struck the ship's hull. Damage. Report, she called as she rushed to the bridge. Hull integrity at 92%, Kyle reported from the engineering station. We can still fly. Then let's fly. Now. The Artemis lifted off, powerful engines pushing it rapidly away from the surface. But their troubles weren't over. The ship's sensors detected multiple vessels launching from the outpost. Drazari pursuit ships, Nathan said grimly. 6 of them. Closing fast. The Artemis accelerated, pushing deeper into space, but the Drazari ships were gaining. The human vessel had been designed for speed, but the damage to its hull was affecting performance. They're charging weapons, Jack warned. Monitoring the sensors, the first blast rocked the ship, sending everyone grabbing for handholds. Main engine damaged, Kyle reported, his fingers flying over the controls. We're losing power. Susan looked at her team, seeing the grim reality in their eyes. They couldn't outrun the Drazari fleet with a damaged engine. For a moment, it seemed their mission would end in failure despite successfully rescuing the Queen. Queen Zoralina, who had been resting in a makeshift medical area, appeared in the doorway to the bridge. Though still weak, her voice was clear. I may be able to help, she said. My people are not far. The team looked at her in surprise. The Altarian fleet is hiding in your outer solar system, she explained. They were afraid to approach Earth directly without invitation. But I can contact them telepathically if we amplify my abilities. Nathan's scientific mind immediately grasped the possibility. We could modify our communications array to serve as an amplifier for telepathic signals. At least in theory. Do it, Susan ordered as another blast from the Drazari ships rocked the Artemis. Nathan and Kyle worked frantically to modify the communications equipment according to Queen Zoralina's specifications. Bill and Susan prepared for possible boarding. Actions, distributing weapons, and planning defensive positions. Jack and Amara stayed with the Queen, helping her focus her thoughts as the modified equipment was brought to her. Your people rescued me when my own could not, Zoralina told them as she prepared to use the device. This debt will not be forgotten. The Queen placed her delicate hands on the modified communications array. Her skin began to glow brighter, pulsing with light as she concentrated. The humans watched in fascination as the equipment responded. Glowing with the same rhythm, for several minutes, nothing seemed to happen. The Drizari ships continued to close in, their weapons fire becoming more accurate with each blast. The Artemis shuddered under the impacts, systems failing across the ship. Engine power at 30%, Kyle reported. Hull breaches on lower decks. We can't take much more of this. Then the sensors lit up with new contacts. Multiple ships appearing, Jack announced, his voice rising with excitement. They're coming out of some kind of faster-than-light travel. Configuration unknown, definitely not Drizari. Through the viewports, the crew saw the new arrivals. Unlike the angular, aggressive Drizari vessels, these ships were elegant and crystalline, seeming to shimmer with internal light. Their design was both beautiful and clearly advanced. The Altarian fleet, Queen Zoralina said, a smile crossing her alien features. My people have come. The space around them erupted in energy discharges as the Altarian ships engaged the Drizari. The Drizari vessels, outmatched by the more advanced technology, began to retreat. They're hailing us, Jack said, surprised. A melodic voice came through the ship's speakers. Artemis vessel, this is Commander Alarn of the Altarian. Alliance, we have you under our protection. Please proceed to our flagship for assistance. The largest of the Altarian ships moved alongside the damaged Artemis, creating some kind of energy field that enveloped the human vessel and began to draw it toward a docking bay. Once aboard the Altarian flagship, the humans witnessed technology beyond their imagination. Medical personnel with the same luminescent skin as the Queen quickly took over care of Zoralina, placing her in a healing chamber filled with glowing energy. The human team received medical attention as well. Bill's injuries from the rescue operation were treated with devices that sealed his wounds without leaving scars. The Altarian healers seemed fascinated by human biology. Just as the humans were amazed by the aliens, after resting and recovering, the team was summoned to meet with Queen Zoralina. They found her in a grand chamber, looking completely restored. Her skin glowed brightly, and she moved with graceful dignity. My friends, she greeted them warmly. I owe you my life, and my people owe you the continued existence of our alliance. Susan stepped forward. We're glad we could help, Your Majesty. There is something I must tell you, the Queen continued. My presence near your solar system was not accidental. We have been observing Earth for some time. The humans exchanged glances. Our scientists predicted that humans would soon develop interstellar travel capabilities. I came to evaluate your species for potential alliance membership. And what did you find? Jack asked. Your people have proven themselves beyond my expectations, Zoralina replied. You act with courage and compassion even when facing the unknown. These are rare qualities in our galaxy. 1 month later, at the United Nations headquarters in New York, world leaders gathered for an historic occasion. President Martinez and Queen Zoralina signed the first interspecies treaty in human history, establishing Earth as a protected ally of the Altarian Alliance. The team members who had rescued the Queen were honored as humanity's first galactic ambassadors. They stood proudly as representatives of Earth while diplomats from around the world applauded. Today marks not an ending but a beginning, Queen Zoralina announced to the assembly. Your unity in coming to the aid of a stranger from the stars demonstrates that despite your differences, humanity shares a fundamental quality we value above all others, the willingness to risk yourselves for others, even those different from you. That evening, Jack stood on the balcony of his hotel room, looking up at the stars with new eyes. Susan joined him, carrying a small device given to her by the Altarians. They're offering me command of the first joint human-Altarian exploration vessel, she told him. They want you on the crew too, all of us actually. Jack smiled, watching the faint light of an Altarian ship passing overhead, visible now that humanity knew what to look for. I guess we've got a lot more firsts ahead. Of us? He said. Susan nodded, her eyes on the stars that no longer seemed so distant or unreachable. Earth's mightiest heroes, she said with a small smile. That's what the newspapers are calling us. I prefer to think of us as pioneers, Jack replied. The first of many. Above them, stars twinkled in the night sky, not just points of light now, but doorways to new worlds and new civilizations. Humanity had taken its first steps into a vast, complex galactic community, and the universe would never be the same.